The crisp morning air in Springfield carried a sense of unease, as though the city itself knew something was about to unfold. Officer James Cooper adjusted his uniform, but his mind wasn't on the briefing he had just left. Instead, his eyes were drawn to Max, his loyal canine partner. The German Shepherd sat alert in the back of the patrol car, his amber eyes scanning every movement with precision. For James, Max wasn't just a partner, he was family. A steadfast protector who had been by his side through thick and thin. Max had always been extraordinary. From the day he was recruited into the canine unit, his sharp instincts and unyielding loyalty set him apart. While other dogs hesitated, Max charged forward, his keen sense of smell and acute hearing turning him into the department's most reliable asset. But what truly made Max special was his intuition. He seemed to understand people, their fears, their intentions, in a way that defied explanation. As they pulled up to Springfield Mall for their routine patrol, Max's ears perked. James noticed immediately. "What is it, buddy?" he asked, glancing at the dog through the rearview mirror. Max let out a low, rumbling growl, his gaze fixed on the entrance of the mall. "All right, let's check it out," James muttered, his hand instinctively brushing against the leash clipped to his belt. Inside, the mall buzzed with life. Shoppers moved from store to store, children laughed as they clutched colorful balloons, and the scent of freshly baked pretzels wafted through the air. But Max's behavior didn't align with the cheerful atmosphere. His growls grew louder, his body tense as he pulled James toward a corridor leading to the food court. "What's got you so worked up?" James asked, his own tension rising. Just as they turned the corner, a sound erupted that froze the entire mall. Gunshots. Screams filled the air as panicked shoppers scattered in every direction. James's training kicked in, but Max was already ahead, his body low to the ground as he tracked the sound. The food court was in chaos. Tables were overturned, trays of food scattered, and in the center of it all stood a man armed with a rifle. James didn't have time to think. He trusted Max to lead the way. "Max, stay low," he commanded, his voice firm but calm. Max didn't hesitate. The German Shepherd moved with calculated precision, his muscles coiled like a spring. The shooter's attention was elsewhere, and James knew this was their chance. "Max, now!" he barked. Like a bullet, Max launched himself forward, his powerful legs propelling him through the chaos. The shooter barely had time to react before Max was on him, knocking the rifle from his hands and pinning him to the ground. James was right behind, securing the weapon and cuffing the man as Max maintained his hold, his sharp eyes never wavering. The mall fell silent, the echoes of chaos replaced by murmurs of awe. Shoppers peeked out from their hiding spots, their wide eyes fixed on the German Shepherd who had just stopped a disaster. James knelt beside Max, his hand resting on the dog's head. "You're incredible, buddy," he said softly. Max's tail wagged once, a brief moment of celebration before his ears perked up again, ever vigilant. As James led the subdued shooter out of the mall, cheers erupted from the crowd. Max walked beside him, his head held high, oblivious to the applause. For him, this wasn't about recognition, it was about protecting the people who needed him most. That day, Max wasn't just a canine officer, he was a hero. But the events that followed would test his strength, loyalty, and the bond he shared with James in ways they never could have imagined. In the days following the mall incident, Max's heroics became the talk of Springfield. Local news outlets ran stories. Children drew pictures of the brave German Shepherd, and the department received countless letters of gratitude. But while the town celebrated, Max's behavior began to change in ways James couldn't ignore. It started with restless nights. Max, usually calm and composed, began pacing the house, his ears twitching at the slightest noise. James often found him staring out the window, his body tense as if anticipating danger. During their routine patrols, Max was hypervigilant, his growls coming more frequently and his reactions sharper. "You're on edge, buddy," James said one morning, kneeling beside Max. The dog's amber eyes met his, filled with an emotion James couldn't quite place. Was it fear, guilt, or something deeper? Hoping to ease Max's tension, James took him to their favorite park, a sprawling expanse of green where Max loved to chase frisbees and roll in the grass. But even there, Max remained alert, his eyes scanning every passerby. When a jogger accidentally dropped a water bottle nearby, Max barked sharply, his body ready to pounce. James quickly calmed him, but the incident left him shaken. "This isn't like you," James murmured, stroking Max's fur. He decided it was time to consult Emily, the department's canine trainer and Max's longtime mentor. Emily was known for her deep understanding of working dogs and their unique challenges. When James arrived at the training facility, Emily greeted them with a warm smile. "There's my favorite duo," she said, scratching Max behind the ears. But her expression turned serious as James explained Max's recent behavior. "He's always been so steady, but now, it's like he's carrying something he can't let go of." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "Trauma affects dogs just like it affects humans," she explained. "Max went through a highly intense situation at the mall. He might be processing it in his own way. Let's run a few exercises and see how he responds." The training yard was familiar territory for Max, but today his responses were uncharacteristically erratic. During a scent tracking drill he hesitated, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. When Emily introduced a controlled stress scenario, Max reacted aggressively, barking and lunging in a way James had never seen before. "He's not himself," James admitted, his voice heavy with concern. Emily placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "This doesn't mean he's broken. It means he needs help. Let's work together to get him back on track." Over the next few weeks, Emily guided James and Max through a tailored rehabilitation program. They focused on rebuilding Max's confidence, using positive reinforcement and gradual exposure to stressful scenarios. Max's progress was slow but steady, each small victory a testament to his resilience. One evening, as James and Max sat on the porch watching the sunset, James spoke softly. "You're not just a hero to this town, Max. You're my hero. We'll get through this together." Max leaned against him, his warm presence a reminder of the unbreakable bond they shared. Little did they know, the challenges they were overcoming were just the beginning. A new threat was brewing, one that would demand every ounce of strength, courage, and trust they had built. It started as a faint unease. The calls to the Springfield Police Department began trickling in. Unexplained disturbances, strange noises at night, and reports of shadows moving through neighborhoods. Initially dismissed as paranoia, the pattern soon became impossible to ignore. Someone, or something, was lurking in the shadows, and Max felt it before anyone else. During their late-night patrols, Max's heightened vigilance returned with an intensity James hadn't seen since the mall incident. His growls became sharper, his body rigid as he scanned the dark streets. James trusted Max's instincts implicitly, but even he couldn't shake the growing sense of dread. One evening, as they drove through a quiet residential area, Max's ears perked up. A low growl rumbled from his chest as he stared intently at a cluster of trees near a park. "What is it, boy?" James asked, pulling the patrol car to a stop. Max whined, his nose pressed to the window. James grabbed his flashlight and opened the door. Max leaped out, his body low and alert as he moved toward the trees. The stillness of the night was unnerving, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Suddenly, Max froze, his gaze locked on a figure partially obscured by the shadows. "Police! Show yourself!" James called out, his voice firm. The figure didn't move, but Max's growl deepened. James tightened his grip on the leash, his other hand hovering near his holstered weapon. As they stepped closer, the figure bolted, darting through the trees with Max in hot pursuit. James ran after them, his heart pounding as he navigated the uneven terrain. Max's barks echoed through the darkness, guiding him. When he finally caught up, he found Max standing guard over a man pinned to the ground. The man's face was obscured by a hood, but his frantic movement suggested he was trying to escape. James cuffed the man, his adrenaline still surging. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" he demanded. The man mumbled incoherently, his voice trembling with fear. But as James searched him for identification, something about the man's belongings caught his attention. An old photograph of the Springfield Mall, with the food court circled in red ink. Max sat beside him, his posture tense, as if sensing that this man wasn't just a random intruder. James's mind raced. Could this be connected to the mall incident? The question swirled as he called for backup, his grip on Max's leash tightening. As officers arrived to take the man into custody, Max remained by James's side, his unwavering loyalty a source of comfort amidst the growing uncertainty. James knelt down and stroked the German shepherd's head. "Good work, Max," he whispered, though the unease in his chest lingered. That night, as James reviewed the evidence, he couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't over. The photograph, the man's behavior, it all pointed to something bigger, something that wasn't yet fully revealed. And Max, ever vigilant, seemed to sense it too. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The interrogation room was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Darren Cole, the man apprehended by Max and James, sat slumped in the metal chair, his cuffed hands trembling slightly. His eyes darted nervously between the table and the two detectives standing before him. Outside the room, behind the one-way mirror, James observed silently, Max sitting alertly by his side. The air was thick with tension, every second stretching endlessly as they waited for Cole to speak. "Why were you at the park that night?" one detective pressed, his voice sharp. Cole flinched but kept his gaze fixed on the table. I don't know what you mean," he stammered. "I was just passing through." "Then explain this," the other detective interjected, sliding the photograph of the mall food court across the table. The red ink circling it stood out starkly, even in the dim light. Cole's face paled, and a nervous tick in his jaw betrayed the storm brewing inside him. James leaned closer to the glass, his eyes narrowing. Max, as if sensing his partner's unease, let out a low, quiet growl. James placed a reassuring hand on the dog's head, muttering softly, "Easy, buddy, we'll get the truth." The detective continued, his tone growing firmer. "We found this in your possession. What's the significance of the food court? Why is it circled?" Cole's composure cracked. Beads of sweat formed on his brow, and he began fidgeting with his bound hands. "It's not what it looks like," he muttered, his voice barely audible. The detective slammed his hand on the table, causing Cole to jump. "Then what is it? Who are you working for?" "I don't know their names," Cole blurted out, his voice cracking under the pressure. "They just told me where to go, what to leave. I swear, I don't know anything else." James exchanged a glance with his captain, who stood beside him in the observation room. "This goes deeper than we thought," the captain murmured, his expression grim. James nodded, his jaw tightening as he looked back at Cole. "What did they pay you for?" the detective pressed. "Why the mall?" Cole hesitated, his lips quivering as though weighing his options. Finally, he broke. "It was supposed to be a warning," he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Just a scare tactic. They didn't tell me the full plan, but it was big, bigger than anything I've been part of before." Outside, Max stood, his ears twitching at the rising tension in Cole's voice. James knelt beside him, whispering, "Good boy, Max, we'll figure this out." Over the next several days, the department worked tirelessly to piece together the fragments of Cole's confession. Surveillance footage, intercepted messages, and Cole's phone records revealed a chilling network operating in Springfield's shadows. Max played a vital role in the investigation, his tracking skills uncovering hidden caches of evidence during raids on suspected safe houses. During one operation, Max led James and a team of officers to a secluded warehouse on the city's outskirts. The German Shepherd's sharp nose uncovered a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside, they found blueprints for several public locations, a detailed map of the mall, and lists of potential targets. The chilling discovery painted a grim picture of an operation far larger than James had imagined. Late one night, James sat in the precinct's conference room, poring over the collected evidence. Max lay at his feet, his presence a steadying force amidst the storm of uncertainty. "Whoever's behind this," James muttered, running a hand through his hair, "they're meticulous. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer." Max's ears perked at the sound of footsteps approaching. Emily, the department's canine trainer, entered, carrying a fresh stack of files. "James," she said, her tone serious, "I think we found something. Max's work at the warehouse gave us more than just evidence. It gave us a lead." As Emily laid out the files, James felt a flicker of hope. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together, and with Max by his side, he was determined to see the fight through to the end. The tension in the air was palpable as James and Max moved through the dense shadows of the park. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie silhouettes that danced with the rustling wind. Max led the way, his nose low to the ground, his body tense but deliberate. Every step he took seemed to resonate with purpose, his tail straight and his ears sharply tuned to the slightest sound. Suddenly, Max stopped. His body stiffened, his ears perked forward, and a low, guttural growl escaped his throat. James felt his pulse quicken. "What is it, buddy?" he whispered, gripping the flashlight in one hand and resting the other on the holster at his hip. Max didn't respond. Instead, his growl deepened, and he took a cautious step forward. James shone the flashlight in the direction of Max's gaze. At first, there was nothing but the sway of bushes and the soft glint of dew on leaves. But then, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, hooded man who froze in the beam of light. His hands were raised defensively, but the glint of metal in one hand betrayed him. "Drop it," James commanded, his voice echoing through the stillness of the night. The man hesitated, glancing toward the trees as though contemplating an escape. But before he could act, Max lunged forward, stopping mere inches from the man's leg. His sharp bark cut through the silence, a clear warning that he wouldn't hesitate to defend his partner. The man froze, the weapon clattering to the ground. James moved swiftly, securing the assailant with practiced efficiency. Max remained by his side, his body a coiled spring of energy, ready to act if necessary. "Good boy," James murmured, giving Max a brief but meaningful pat before turning his attention back to the man. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice firm but measured. The man hesitated, his gaze darting between James and the dog that still growled low and steady. Finally, under the pressure of Max's unyielding stare, he began to speak. The words that followed revealed a network of individuals operating in the shadows of Springfield, a web of coordinated efforts to destabilize the city through fear and chaos. As reinforcements arrived to take the suspect into custody, James knelt beside Max, meeting his loyal companion's amber eyes. "We couldn't have done it without you," he said softly. Max's tail wagged ever so slightly, a brief moment of acknowledgement before he returned to his vigilant posture. The days that followed were a whirlwind of investigations and revelations. The man they had captured was a key player in a larger operation, and his testimony led to the dismantling of a criminal network that had been operating under the radar for years. Max's role in the case didn't go unnoticed. He became a symbol of resilience and courage, not just within the police department, but throughout the entire community. At a special ceremony held at the precinct, Max was honored for his bravery. Children who had drawn pictures of him at the mall now crowded around, eager to meet the hero who had kept their city safe. James stood proudly beside Max, reflecting on the journey they had shared. From the chaos of the mall to the darkness of the park, their bond had been tested and proven unbreakable. As the crowd applauded, James knelt beside Max, his hand resting gently on the dog's head. "You're not just a partner, Max," he said, his voice barely audible above the noise. "You're a hero." Max leaned into him, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding that needed no words. That night, as they returned home, James allowed himself a rare moment of peace. Max, lying contentedly at his feet, let out a soft sigh, his eyes closing as though he finally felt the weight of their journey lifting. The city was safe, but more importantly, the bond between man and dog had shown the world what true courage looked like. If you were moved by Max and James' incredible journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more inspiring stories. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you.